absolutely ridiculous. They'll believe anything. They'll believe anything. Maybe.
If you needed some mental help or you had to see a psychologist, would you feel comfortable telling people that you were doing that? The attitude towards mental health in Asia is quite interesting. Many people have discussed this with me, and personally, I have seen more than one psychologist in my life. I've always thought it to be a very, great experience, especially if you embrace it. But I thought that we could talk about this a little bit today. I know Emma's had some experience, and just try and see if we can have a constructive discussion which might help some people talk about this. So Emma, let's go straight to you. What's your opinion of psychology and mental health and your story?
Yeah, so I can start to share about my story and we can start it from there. So I think in Taiwan it's actually very common since like high school they have like 辅导室, right?
Yes.
It's like
Or a counselor.
Counselor, but like it's kind of, I don't know about your experiences, but in my people use that to skip from physical class or skip from the test. Because I need to go there to lay down or take some rest. It's like part of the 保健中心, part of the school clinic.
I think that's actually very similar even in Western countries. I think the counselor doesn't have that much time to really deal with people. Right?
And also just an excuse or place for people to take rest, for students to take some rest.
And people might be too young as well at that point. So.
And then I think my first official experiences with the counseling was the time when I was in the US for my graduate school. And actually, I think just because they're just more open to talk about it. So the school encouraged students to visit the counseling center. Like if you have any things you want to talk about, feel free to visit. We can always make time and you can always call this number, this and that. So when I was there, I was quite stressed out due to the recruiting, the culture with the people, etc. And then part of me was like, okay, if I can go there, talk with someone, it might help to practice my English. So I was like, okay, yeah, why not?
Interesting.
Because I have to talk with someone in English.
Language exchange.
Yeah, right. one way exchange. No exchange, but just one practice. I was like, okay, and so I actually went there and visit. And I had two counselors. One, it was in my first year, and the other one was in my second year. The second one was a PhD student. So she was getting her license. So she need to have practice hour. So it's kind of like for her to practice the skill to how to consult with the student and collect those hours as an intern for her to apply with the license. So like both of them are good experiences. But then when I came back to Taiwan, back to a few years ago, I was at the time with a very stress work. So I decided to, and then I was being through the very challenging relationship. So after that, I was like, man, it was too hard. I want to talk with someone. And it seems like the talking help. So I reached out to one of my high school classmates. She is now also a therapist. So I was like, and she's in Tainan. So I was like, would you recommend someone I can reach out who is in Taipei so I can have that session start? And she threw me a few names. I started reach out. So that was my official experiences in Taiwan to start with the counseling. It took around, I think 2 years around. And then my therapist stopped because her...
Took 2 years for what?
For the counseling.
Oh, you mean the duration that
you had? The duration. So I been there, I went there once every week. So it was Saturday. I've been there once like 15 minutes per week.
50.
Okay. Yeah. So, and then now is my second one. I switched my job to my current job, and I still find that the transition itself is challenging, and also I want to continue to explore further about myself. So I started the other one earlier last year, so it's also around like almost 2 years from now. So that's my experiences. Overall, I think for me it's very positive, but it also took me a while to realize how to use it.
I think that's important.
Because during my first one, I think during that 2 years, I spent like 1 year to complain why I have to pay this, right? It was like, why I have to pay this, or like why I have to come here. Is that because my problem, or like why other people don't have to come? Why I'm the only one need to pay for these services? And why I'm in so struggle, this and that. So I actually come with a lot of like angry, like why I'm taking this is really help.
Was it useful though, even though that happened?
I think even though just by talking that is it's helpful. And then second is because I was there because I've been through the challenging relationship. And after, for example, like 6 months later, it doesn't matter, right? It already passed. So I also raised this up to my therapist to say, like, I don't have a problem with the ex relationship now. Should we just stop? And she was like more encouraging. She was more like, do you have anything to talk about? And what about your job? So she actually let me to talk through a lot of different stuff. I think when look back, I think it's worth it. But I think when just join the journey by myself, right? And also because when I was talking with my friends or I didn't talk it actually with my family, but when I talk about it, people will naturally ask the question like, why you have to do it? Like, you look fine, right? And what are the things you're talking about? And if you're struggle with the relationship, isn't that done already? It was like, oh, you're visiting the therapist because you are transition your career. Isn't that done? Are you still struggle? Then if you're not struggle, then why you're still paying a visit to a therapist? I think it actually come with a lot of question. Like,
so it seems
why
like
you're
people don't
doing it.
really get why you would go there.
Like, your life seems fine, then why you are doing it? I think come with a lot of questions.
But isn't that interesting what you just said? Your life seems fine. So what does that mean? You're waking up in the morning, eating food, going to work, coming home, sleeping. Oh, your life seems fine.
And also there's not like immediate, I guess it's like, for example, no immediate challenges like my family are still in health. There's no like financial crisis or relationship crisis in my life at this point. And then it seems like things are just going. Then
okay, so there
why
are
you're
two
visiting,
issues
right?
there, right? So one is that you look fine, so why do you need help? The second one is the problem's over, why do you keep going?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? I think that people don't really, I think what you alluded to there was understand the real purpose. Because you don't have to be going through a terrible time to go for therapy. You might have some stuff that happened to you in your past that you want to deal with. You might be looking for some techniques and strategies in your life that can help you to do things better and to be a better functioning person. Doesn't have to necessarily mean that there's always some kind of an emergency happening.
Yeah, I feel like maybe it's in Taiwan, but I feel like in this specific culture, because we didn't actually being taught that if we have problem, we can use this kind of channel to talk with someone about the things we are struggling. So I think about when we are girls, right? We talk about things with our friends.
Yeah.
We have a drink, then we complain about like relationship, about the work, and after that, things get done, we move on. It's actually quite common for girls to talk about things in with the friends. But then when it comes to Richard's point, right? I think it's about actually in Taiwan, I feel like the trigger, especially in Asia, the trigger is always you being through something difficult. And that's the trigger to start a therapist. Otherwise, it wouldn't be like quite abnormal to say, I'm fine, I feel like life's going on, but I want to explore further. So I want to pay that effort on it. But after that, people might see different things when it comes to when that is done. Do you want to continue to spend that effort to understand yourself further, or the things that is not just about now, but the things about your past and the future you want to build?
Sure.
You want to
so it's not
continue
really
that journey,
proactive much. It's more reactive to a problem rather than
at the first.
proactive.
At
Okay.
first, yeah.
Abby, have you had any experience with this, or do you know someone who's gone through it, or
I have been to the therapist once.
just once?
Just once.
Okay, how come once?
That's effective. Just once.
Really good doctor, right? Like, cured.
No, the doctor said you don't have to come. I don't know why, but they think, oh, okay, I follow her order. Just I try to figure out by
So
myself.
why'd you go there? Can we ask?
Okay, I have a kind of, how to say, I don't like some when people trying to approach me and kind of ask me too much private questions, and it's like a little bit offended,
Okay.
and I don't know what to do
So you wanted to go to the therapist to help
because
you
I'm
stop
sometimes
being offended?
because I'm my reaction to the kind of thing I think is normal people probably will feel like it's okay and ignore it, right? But I couldn't ignore it. I just like keep in my mind. And accumulatively, sometimes I will feel a little bit afraid of the person. So I think that should be kind of thing I need to figure out. So I went to the doctor.
But do you went to the kind like in the hospital, go to the 挂号 and then to visit one in a clinic, or it's more like just talk?
Yeah, it's a call. I make a reservation. It's a private therapist.
Okay.
Yeah, and but I think what they lead the conversation is they not really focus on the situation you are facing. They will know a little bit, but after that they will ask about your past because they think they think it's like something wrong in your past, but it didn't fix it or you didn't resolve yet, so it remain to nowadays, and it showed up in different ways. So it's not what you look right now. It's something behind you to bother you. And like my friend say, she say sometimes she think the same thing comes back to find her repeatedly.
If you haven't dealt with it, I think that happens. Yeah.
She at the time she thinks, oh, it's my fate because all my destiny, because all the same thing keep coming back to find her. But right now I think no, that's not a destiny because she didn't figure out how to face the problem. So every time when the comes out, so it gonna bothers her.
Sure.
So
I think instead of being a destiny, I think it's almost like a communication from yourself to yourself saying, hey, here's an area you should be focusing on because it keeps coming back. I think most people have this experience where you have a repetitive thing that happens to you quite a lot in your life. And whenever that happens, that's often something in the back, something either from your past or just some kind of a blockage you have somewhere, which makes this thing keep happening.
Yes. So I think like many Taiwanese will think, if there's no big issue right now, so you should be okay. You don't have to look at the therapist, right? But there's still something like in the past you probably don't know. So I think but it's hard for the person to figure out by themselves. But the therapy will ask the right questions and lead you to figure out.
Sure. Actually, for me at least, the most interesting one of these is like your love relationships. So I think I've spoken with you about this, Emma. Like there's this book I read. It's a cheesy title. It's How to Forget the Love You Want. But the guy, when he wrote the book, I think he revolutionized this area of psychology, and he was showing that what your brain is trying to do through your love relationships is trying to relive the past so that you can heal from all the things that happened. So your brain is almost trying to recreate what happened to you before so that you can deal with it and get past it. Which is really interesting. And I mean, ever since I learned about that, like I think similar to you, like I had a bad relation, my first love. And when it ended, it broke me. And it took a long time. And I think eventually the one day I was so desperate, I'd been crying for so long, that I picked up what we had. Do you have yellow pages in Taiwan? It's like a phone book. It's a big, thick phone book. And you open it and I searched psychology. And I phoned the first number and I got an answering machine. And I was crying. I said, I need help. Please, can you phone me back? And luckily this woman phoned me.
Okay.
And she was amazing. I went to see her the first time. She was not young, but not old, but really sexy. And she used to dress really kind of sexy, but classy at the same time. And the first time I arrived there, she was sitting in the garden smoking the hugest cigar I'd ever seen.
Wow.
I was like, whoa, who is this woman, right? And then, so I saw her, and she was the one who put me onto this book. And it really changed my life because it's kept coming back. And I can see my own behaviors. I can see why I do the certain things I do. I can see those repetitive patterns. And once you see it, you learn ways to get around it. And you also learn to like tell the person you're with to say, listen, when you do that, you're not doing anything wrong. But for me, myself, like when you do that, it triggers this memory from my past. And that's why I have a big reaction to that small thing you're doing. And when that person understands why you react in that situation and where it comes from your past, they're much more able to be empathetic towards you. And they don't look at you like, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, why do you react that way to such a small thing? They get it. And they say, aha, he's reacting like that because of that thing that happened before. And then when they look at you, they can be much more loving and much more understanding. And it's very interesting to see, you know.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you know yourself better.
You
And-
learn yourself and you learn what hurt you.
You know,
Because some things hurt you, even though you think, how could that hurt me? But it actually hurt you. Like, a very nice example is my current relationship. Like, you know, I think a lot of Taiwanese dads, from what I've seen, kind of, so when they speak, they sound angry. A lot of the time, and they always put "ah" at the end of the sentence. Like I've seen this from a lot of people, right? And I think that, like for my fiance, like when she was younger, her dad always spoke like this to her, and she didn't like it, and it became this thing, and her brain wants to heal from that. So there are times where, like, she's like picking a fight with me, but it can't be random, because like there'll be a thing that like we've talked about where I've said to her before, listen, like, you know, I hate this one thing, and I'll find her actually doing that thing, and I'll be like, but hold on a minute, you know, if you say that thing, you know the reaction you're going to get from me. But that's what that book explains, is that people will actually engineer the situation. They know what pisses you off, and in her brain, she knows if she says those things to me, that I'm going to act just like her dad did. And I'm going to and give her shit. And she hates it here. But here, her brain loves it.
Oh.
So the brain is recreating those situations. And in these types of situations, you can then say to the person, listen, like, you don't need to do this, right? Like, if you need attention from me, I'll give it to you with pleasure. You don't need to provoke this kind of an argument. So when you learn about this stuff, it sets you free, because you understand what's going on. There were these situations where you had no idea why they were happening. And then you get it. Because otherwise you're looking at this person and saying, why do you keep doing the thing you know I hate? But when you realize that they're not, it's not conscious, it's the subconscious driving it, and they're doing those things to get a reaction that they need, you can understand why it's happening. So this type of stuff it's fascinating to talk about, right?
I think it also takes a lot of self-awareness, because
Big time.
like, number one, you have to see the interaction patterns between your fiance and her father. And second, you are paying attention at the moment when your fiance were saying something, and then you pay extra attention to have that thinking, right?
Well, that's the hard part, is catching it in the moment.
Yeah, it's
right?
like, if I don't like it, then why you keep doing it? And by having that theory, you can have that conversation. And sometimes just we might or might not have the capacity or knowledge to understand why there's just a lot of time we don't know why we act in that way, right?
Sure. And I'm not like blaming her, I mean, because I do exactly
But
the
it's
same
more like to
things
just
to
point it
her.
out.
Yeah. But I think that I'm like 13 years older than her. So like now when I see myself doing it, luckily I start catching myself. Or I'll say to her, look, you know, like, because obviously the reason that my brain chose her is because she's that perfect one to help me with this kind of stuff. So if I'm sure you've gathered, like, I love talking. So like when I was younger, like my mom would listen to me talk, or pretend to listen, and not really listen, and I'd talk, and then ask a question and find out that she hadn't been listening to me. And that hurt me in some kind of way in my brain. So she does the same thing. Like, because I love talking, so she talk, and then she'll be, yeah, but she's not really listening. And then I'll ask her a question, and that triggers me. But instead now of getting angry most of the time, like sometimes I say to her, look, please don't do that. That is what happened to me as a kid. That's the thing that really like bothered me so much. So when you do it, it's not really I'm angry at you. I'm more angry at the past and what happened. So I think she could be more empathetic.
Oh, but how to say? You have to figure out by yourself, right? You know yourself.
I think it takes a long time.
Takes a long time to become the self-awareness, so you can figure out. Oh no, the situation is not talking at the person.
Yeah.
It's about your past experience.
But this is beautiful.
It's beautiful, but
Yeah.
it's hard. But I think when you figure out, it will solve a lot of problems because you can communicate with the person
Sure.
in front of you.
But
and
more importantly, your brain can heal. And you can actually learn that when your
Forgive
brain
yourself.
is pushing you to react a certain way, you spot it and you say, I'm not reacting like that today. I don't need that. This person is not that person. And this person didn't do that stuff to me. The other one did. So just because they're doing it doesn't mean that I need to get upset with them, because actually it's not that big a deal. Because I do talk a lot. If I talk a lot, right, not everybody should always listen to me all the time. Who the fuck am I, right?
It's like a forgive the bad past.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In a way. And you know what? I think forgiving the past is one thing, but there are other things where it's like you can forgive it, but it's hard to forget it. And you
Yeah.
learn to actually be able to take yourself out of those types of situations rather than, I don't know, another way. Like you learn what triggers you and you learn to avoid it, I suppose. But otherwise, if you're just like letting the subconscious drive and you're reacting to things. You don't know why you're reacting to them. Then the other person's looking at you like you're flipping insane, because it's like all I did was ask that question and this person lost their mind.
Right.
Yeah.
Lots of time I don't know why I do this. I don't know. I know I have these kind of habits, but actually it's like more spontaneously, and I don't know why. It takes me time to figure out layer by layer by myself. But if there's some professional therapists or some people to help you, you will be better.
Sure. But let's take it back a little bit. Let's
Yeah.
talk about Taiwan again. So what do you think the general attitude towards mental health is? Like if you wanted to take 3 days off from work because of some mental reason, say, look, I'm feeling a bit like this, I need to take a few days off, how would that be responded to by bosses or coworkers?
I think it depends on the companies. Like if it's a it's a U.S. company or foreign company or local company. And also a big company, big multinational companies or smaller, middle size or smaller size. I think it varies. I think in general it's come with more complex. Like Taiwan is one of the site. It's the policy itself. It's more open. But I feel like just in general, I didn't, in my current position or in my previous work, just in general, I didn't see much ask from that. So even though people might feel it, they might just say, I want to take an annual leave or a sick leave.
Yes.
Rather than just say, oh, I just don't feel so like mentally in the place. They just say, I want to take annual leave.
So it's not like easy to admit the real reason.
I think it's more like I just need to take leave without further elaborate why you are taking the leave for whatever reason, because they just allows a certain day for you to take.
So why do you think people feel that pressure to not admit the real reason, but to actually say that it's for something else?
I would say to Phil and Abby, feel free to add on. I feel like for one thing, it's self-awareness. Like, do they really know they don't feel well just because they just not mentally ready or
So
struggle?
you don't understand.
You don't understand, just so don't feel well. But sometimes, like burnout is like a chronic disease. There's no such a term as burnout until recent 2-3 decades. It's coming very recently, just because the pace of work we've been experiences and move on.
And it's the frog in the water, right?
Yeah,
It's like you don't
because
realize
it just take a while for you to get kick in. So actually burnout take a while, but then it also take a while for some people to heal from the burnout. So I would say, to be honest, number one would be self-awareness. You feel tired doesn't mean you're tired because you're struggling a little bit with relationship or whatsoever. You just feel like I need to take some rest. That's number one. So people don't say like, I just need someone to take somewhere, for example. And then second, I think definitely there's a worry about the
The stigma.
the stigma, right? It's like, do I perceive as a weak person if I say it out loud?
Yes.
Or how would other people think of me, right?
But isn't that interesting, right? Because to understand that you have a problem and admit that and want to seek help, that's being a strong person. But in a way, doing that is almost now seen as being a weak person. That's very strange. Like,
So that's one thing when I was very struggle at the first place to say, why was I the only person have to go to therapy? Because as I mentioned in my previous work, I feel like it's a very, very intense working environment. Like it's a very high pressure, fast pace, right? And I asked my therapist, like, why am I the only one need to come to the counseling and therapist? Like other people, they're fine with it. And then the therapist answered me in two things. So number one, how do you know they're fine? I was like, I don't know, right? Like, they don't know, right?
Assumption there.
And then number two, why don't you feel proud that you are actually proactive, taking care of yourself? That you are more aware, or like you are paying attention, or you are making the effort, whatever it leads to, right? So you're making something for yourself. Isn't that something to be happy about? And I was like, oh, that's very different perspective, something I never heard before. And echo on what Richard just mentioned, right? On one hand, I feel like currently, how I feel is we might all know that we read those books, people talk in podcasts and talk about being vulnerable, right? You want to be vulnerable to open to new opportunities, to show who you are, and you live at present and be true. And that's like, and then after that, I will immediately have the second thought would be, yeah, that's good for them, but not for me. And I was like, oh, then that's that, right? It's like why I feel like if somebody can do, I feel proud for them, but I cannot allow it happen to myself because I don't trust the environment enough, or I don't trust the people around me enough to say if I am really being myself, would I be accepted? I feel like it's very...
It's a lot about being judged.
So it's like, I think it's not just about being judged, but also being afraid of being judged. Because sometimes, I don't know about you, but I didn't actually challenge a lot of assumption. That's kind of my issue, right?
Like what assumptions?
Like for example, if I tell you like, oh, I'm going to therapist, like I tell people with that because I don't really care about what people think of it, because like whatever you think doesn't change my behavior. It's like if you feel like I don't need to, I was like fine. If you're like, oh, good for you, I was like fine, because whatever you think of it doesn't change this decision. But there are other things I'm in doubt, right? It's like, should I tell people I really want to for example, like change my role like in different function, just one example. But sometimes I feel hesitate to ask that, or like, how do you think of my performance? Sometimes I feel like it's just some assumption I made in my head, but I haven't checked with my counterpart to say, this is my assumption. Does that make sense? Or can you tell me how you feel? So that's kind of my weak spot, to ask that, right? And then that come with also other assumption to say, if I'm saying something vulnerable, do I feel comfortable to check in? Or like, do I trust you tell me the truth? So I think that's my personal struggle. I don't know how is that your experience.
But isn't this like
on telling
half,
that?
this is half the battle won, right? Like once you realize your issue, that's half the battle.
But then the second half is take action to
fix it.
Yeah.
But at least you understand it, and you start to see it more. So Abby, what do you think?
I think probably people will think they need to be like more, have the ability to against the pressure, and it's like we say 抗压性, like if you can against the pressure more means better. It's a good term. You're stronger, right?
Yeah.
So when people realize, oh no, I feel some mentally ill, I don't feel comfortable, they probably were afraid of showing they are weak. So they will try to ignore that or hide it, or just think, no, I just sleep well, I just eat well,
Drink more water.
drink a lot of wine, and it will be better. So they couldn't think about to like find some help, or just so even when they are called for a day off, they were not willing to say I'm not feeling well. They would say, oh, I have something to do, or I need to take a seat.
I wonder, do you think there's family pressure as well with this? Do you think like your family might say, don't tell the truth because we don't want it to reflect on our family?
I don't feel that strong about the family, but I want to echo what Abby just mentioned because I'm thinking about, I think we talked about it before, it's about, for example, the US culture, right? So the US culture, when I was in the graduate school, a lot of time we're seeing our US classmates, it's like, how are you doing? I was like, fine, perfect, right? It was wonderful. But then it's not because they are hiding everything. They just have a very, very small circle of their people. So they are actually going to therapists. They have a circle of people they really trust, like their core family or very close group of people, of friends. So they are talking about the things they are struggling with. But then when it comes to broader, general, like classmates or just in general, like people they interact with in the organization, how's everything? I was like, fine, perfect, right? They just show the best of themselves because they differentiate that much, very, very like different.
But it makes sense, right? Because
Yes.
if people don't know you well, they don't have the necessary context to understand what you're going through. So if you want to talk about your issues, you're going to need to first spend a whole lot of time telling them the context and then be able to talk about it. So that might just take too long or be too much effort to do. So you have a different mask for people you don't know well, and then you drop it for the people you do.
So I think back to your point about the balance, right? So when Abby talked about like being like have a strong anti-pressures strength or things like that, I feel like just in general, the society or the working place is more expecting.
Expect
People behave in a way, and we're also that kind of person to throw ourselves like vulnerably just in the workplace. The horror was like miserable. I have a device. I was like, that's too much. I just come to work, right? So I think that's one thing. But I think the second thing, building on what Richard, your question is, what about the family and friends perception, right? If it's, I feel like just in general, it's like true family of friends. I think they want to see you stay in a good place.
Oh, that's them for you. But I mean like letting other people know. So like when I used to teach kids, do you know dyslexia? People are dyslexic when
Cannot
they read.
focus?
If they read the word look,
okay.
they read cool. They read kind of backwards. And there was a young girl who had this problem, and I could see it. And I tried to discuss this with the parents, but the parents refused to get help for her because that was seen as a mental illness, and they didn't want that to be attached to their daughter. So they would rather choose to let her suffer with that problem rather than let the public or other people she knows know that she has this issue, seen as a sign of weakness.
Yeah, so actually before I read a book, talk about so the book itself, it actually is not about therapy. It's about the teenager criminal. So the cause of it's wrote by a Japanese psychiatry physician. The whole thing about the book is why there is a teenager criminal, right? Because teenagers are supposed to be like not so much exposed to this kind of difficult stuff, but like people are raping or killing people or just making very huge crime. Then what does it come from? And then one theory, more common theory, would be like they are making bad friends. They are being influenced. They want to cause attention. They don't have in love relationship. Their family fall apart. That's why they become bad person or making crime. But this psychiatrist theory, based on his research, is among those teenager criminal, more than like a higher percentage of them are actually in a minor learning disability, because they cannot fit into the school because they are lagging behind in learning, and a lot of reasons because of reading, the comprehensive, the listening, or the visual. And once they are lagging, they cannot catch up and there is a part of it because the parent doesn't help. The parent doesn't want to admit their kid with a problem. So they're looking for other ways to help them or even not even helping them because they cannot accept their kids with this kind of mental, mild mental dysfunction.
They want their kids be
like
normal,
good
like
or like smart.
others
And then they just lagging in the school, and then the further they behind, the further they are harder to fit into the group, and then they become more antisocial because they don't know how to normally talk
like spirals
or
down,
interact with
basically.
each other, and then fall into further and further bad crime, but they don't know that's a wrong thing because they just don't understand.
Sure. And if you think about learning, the way to understand those things is you need to understand cause and effect.
And they don't understand
they
the
don't
cause. They don't
understand it,
understand
Mm-hmm.
why doing this caused that. They have very, very poor planning and execution capability.
I
Very
think
poor.
people don't really see how much education works into this. When I still lived in South Africa, something really affected me. I was in the one afternoon I was watching a TV show, a South African talk show, and they had some guys on there who'd raped women.
Mm-hmm.
But these guys had like zero education. They'd never really had education. And when you heard these guys talking about why they'd raped, you could just see like the way they thought was so different. Like the guy said it. He's like, she walked past. She was wearing a very short thing. Why did she wear that? That's why I did it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Just
And then you look
no
at it and you
logic.
think like, but dude, that doesn't like logically
sense.
make sense at all.
Yeah.
But in his brain, because of his education level, that's all he could kind of see. He couldn't catch the whole cause and effect of this whole thing, right? So it makes a massive difference. And that's what killed me about that young girl, was because I said to the parents, I was like, no, I said to the boss. So I wanted to get the boss to talk to him. I said, this girl can be helped. If you leave it longer, it's going to be much more difficult to help her. But now we can intervene. We can fix this problem. But they wouldn't look at that proactively and forward thinking and do anything to help this poor girl. And she kept getting into trouble at school. She kept getting into trouble at the cram school where I was at. And you could see why. And she kept getting blamed and blamed all the time. And how much did that blame affect her? Where it actually wasn't her fault. She just was slow because she couldn't read the same speed as everybody else.
She will think she's not good enough
Yeah.
to catch up.
And that will stay, like you said in the earlier on, that's something that's in your head and it stays with you, right?
Yeah. And especially when you're young, it gonna be put in your mind deeply. And even when you grow up, you couldn't remember it.
And some things are much more difficult to fix when you're older than when you're younger.
Yeah.
You know, and if you don't get help when you're young, that's really, really sad. My heart broke for that little girl. Like, because before I knew the problem, like I also used to give her trouble and stuff. I also thought she was lazy and a troublemaker.
That's very common with those kids because they are actually interact quite normal when they're like first or second grade, but they just keep lagging because of the learning. And the parents or the teacher will always think why you are behaving so bad, but it's not because they are a bad person. It's because it takes them longer because they have mild gap in terms of learning, but it take extra effort and it's catchable. But if you miss that in the early stage, it's just like detour and people will think they're lazy, but they're not lazy. They just haven't learned it.
And then to catch it up later becomes almost impossible. The amount of extra effort and attention that you need to catch up and keep doing the current work, it just becomes a mountain. So yeah, it's really hard, right? I mean, as we see, from kids to adults, getting help for this kind of stuff is really, really difficult.
I think to learn, like the thing is about therapists. I think if I actually haven't talked to my parents about I'm taking this kind of courses, but I feel like from my perspective nowadays, I'm more feeling like I'm taking care of myself. I don't want them to worry about it too much, considering that they might have more things to worry about, right? They might like, are you suffering from something or being through something bad or this and that? So I think in a way for me, like for parents to understand this is like, I didn't want to spend that much effort to cause them extra worry about it. And also like education, there is generation difference. I feel like our generation are more open in terms of the information, the resources, and actually there are some KOLs, right, in the Facebook, or they are like therapists or psychiatrists. They like to like talk about things for people to get more aware on the relationship, this and that.
Sure.
I feel like just in general, people are more open in terms of the idea. But I feel like even though with the people around me, they don't really know what does it take to take that, how to get into that. Right? If you don't know someone as a therapist,
I think people are pretty scared of therapists.
You might know what's would happen. And for me, the first year was hard because when was there, I don't know what things to talk about. But now I'm through time spent, I getting used to like what the format look like, what are the things I can bring in, how can I use the time to benefit myself.
And you're looking
more.
forward to it, right?
Like
yeah.
I'm now like looking forward to it, and I know like, it could be a period of time. I might not do this forever, so I want to make sure that I'm doing it for a period of time to taking care of myself. I think it also take quite an education for people who want to try it. So it actually take a lot to create that awareness. But all in all, I feel like so far, I feel I'm glad I'm taking it.
Sure.
And it feel like good in terms of the benefit out of the conversation.
Sure. I'm really jealous, actually. I'd love to be going for therapy
But
now.
is that any like English or the
Oh, they have them. The problem is just like really, really expensive. And I'm trying to save to buy a house and all the rest of it. And also just time. I work a lot. But if I had the time, I would love to go for therapy.
Yeah. Speaking of time, I'm curious, like how long it takes until you feel, the therapist really helps me.
I think it depends on the issue. Like
Okay.
if you have
General,
a real
like-
issue that you're dealing with right now, that could be quick. You might have like a few
Depends
sessions
on-
and ta-ding, figure something out, or it could take longer. But what you were talking about there is like once you want to work on yourself, that takes time.
I think for myself, the things. So I think there's a two parts. So for me to get the idea of I'm helping myself rather than because I'm bad, so I have to do it. I think it took me like almost a year, and then through the conversation I had with the therapist, it helped me understand how this works. So I think that's for part one, and then for the part two is like how do I feel in terms of really solving my problem. I feel like that's still going. That's the part still ongoing because I still feel there are things
Well,
I
a
haven't.
life journey, right?
I haven't figured out, and things I want to practice, or the things I just feel like I'm aware, like as you said, it's a halfway.
Sure.
But I haven't, even in that safe space, I haven't speak up as I, for example, myself expected to challenge myself to try the things I might not be able to try in the reality. So I think those are things I'm still working on.
Because I think lots of people are hesitating to go to a therapist, or like they might have the experience but stop immediately because they might think the results should be quick, or they think it's too expensive for them to.
But you know what? Sorry to interrupt you. When you talk about this, I think it's something else. I think that the reason people say they're not doing it and the real reason actually aren't the same thing.
They're afraid of like
Yeah,
facing
well, I
themselves.
mean, imagine if you have a lot of stuff stuck in your head, right? You can feel that you've got a lot of stuff. And if you know that you're going to go and see someone and that person is going to be looking
out.
around and trying to find the answers and digging and stuff, that's going to be pretty scary for most people.
Oh,
Because you might have to confront things that you don't want to confront, things that you've been hiding from yourself for years. Like, because a lot of it, as you said earlier, it's from your family, it's from your past, it's from these hurts, and you have to go through those and unpack them and try and find out exactly how you felt and why you felt
things
that way.
never talked
You know,
before. Like,
Before I got divorced, I saw a psychologist with my ex-wife, and it was so interesting because one of the things that came out of it was that I didn't feel safe. And I was when she like brought this out, I was like, didn't feel safe about what? And it actually turned out to be a lot, which she was right about it, is that in certain ways, being not in my own country, being here and with the things we were discussing, I didn't feel safe. But especially as a younger man, like, oh, strong man, blah, 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 it was hard to accept. You don't feel safe. So, but I'm someone who's open to this, and that was hard. But put yourself in the shoes of someone who isn't that open to it, who's got years and years of baggage. How do you feel comfortable approaching that? And that's why I say they go once and they go, oh shit, I'm not coming back here. Like, what else is this person going to make me talk about? You know, so people might say one thing, but I think the truth a lot of the time is that that hesitating fear comes from fear. Yeah.
oh, just come up here.
I think on the other hand is also the format. Like for someone hasn't been there, it's also like before, for example, it's also hard for me to imagine what, like in an hour, the
What
most
are going to-
the
What you're gonna
FAQ,
do, yeah.
right? The most frequent asked question for me who know I'm still going to a therapist. It's like, you have 50 minutes. You talk about in 2 years. What are the things you've been talking about? Is that I do have so many things to talk about, right? So I think One is like the unknown, like what's the format, what are the things that you can talk, or how do you choose the topic. So some people like struggled a bit about the format itself, what to talk
big
about.
time, yeah.
But then if they start to go, I think that's already the big progress, because people might just stop to say, I don't know, so I don't want to try.
Okay.
I think
So
that's the first part. And then once start talking, there's a different phrase. There's just like, there's really like a journey, because I also been, that is like, I had a conversation to say, as like the therapy asked me, like, you can talk everything here, right? I was like, yeah, I know, because it's been quite a year, so I know how the format would go. And then she asked me how I feel, and then I think of it, and I said, actually, I know I can talk, but there are still things I'm still unwilling to talk. Still, like even after 2 years, because there are still things I haven't, like even at the moment I didn't understand how I feel, so I have challenged time to articulate it, and I have challenged time to, for example, to confront with people. And despite this is person, I can to be extremely talk about it, like I buy her time, right? This 15 minutes, it belongs to me.
So even though you
Even though
embrace the process,
like
it's
the
still
mentally I know how it will work and how it can help, but like deep inside my heart, in my subconscious, because I'm so afraid of confrontation. Like even in the situation, I haven't done it.
See,
That was a very interesting
this is what I was
thing
trying
to
to explain to
experience.
Abby. So
Okay.
you're looking at a person there who embraces this idea, who likes the process
Okay.
and has fear. So imagine someone who doesn't embrace the process, who's going and is not sure, and they have all that fear. You've got to be pretty brave to confront these things, because these are things that are stuck. A lot of the time they've been stuck there for a long time, and you've been hiding away from them for so long, and now you've got to remove all the protective layers and deal with it. That's hard to do for many people, right? I think many people can't do it. I know a lot of people who are like, it doesn't matter, you say I'll pay for you to go, they won't go.
But I feel like a lot of time is also the the needs, because like, to be honest, I don't feel like just in general we have that such an urgent needs to uncover those stuff, because we are, through the way we are growing up, we are being socialized, so we know actually how to, like in general, interact with the people. We know what to say at workplace. Like extremely, if there's a socially awkward, that's different
Autopilot.
story. But in general, I think we know, like most of us, like having a paycheck, have a family, or have a kids, in general, we thought we know how we are doing, and mostly we're doing fine. But I think through this is like, are you looking for something beyond like just fine, or are you have that needs or curiosity to discover it further? I think that's different question, because I bet like it's fine not to having therapists for your whole life. You're totally fine.
Sure.
It's okay.
But it's like going,
But
to,
that's
the,
like
it's
different
like going
path.
to the gym.
It's
right?
like different path. Yeah, it's like a gym.
It's like the maintenance for yourself. I mean, you can go to the gym for your body, but what do you do for your mind? And I don't think you have to do it through therapy, because I think some other people
Read
do it
book.
through reading and self-reflection. And I think if you've been for therapy, like if you had to stop now, I think you might be able to do the therapy for yourself. It's harder, but you could still do it, because you're open to that process of how do I really feel, what's the root cause of what I'm feeling, and you can deal with it, right? But I think what you said there is interesting. A lot of people get forced into it for the first time. They go through some really acute,
really difficult
pain.
situation, like divorce or something really challenging, and they start doing it. And some people will stay, some people will not stay. It really depends.
Yeah, and as we said the one day, it seems to be like one of the keys to really being happy and well adjusted is to get the subconscious and the conscious aligned. So that when you act, you're acting based on the two are the same. So you don't say like, why did I do that? Like, you know why you did it. You chose to do that.
Oh,
You're not,
yes, yes.
you don't have these behaviors that are happening that your subconscious is driving and your conscious has no idea about. The two work together. It's kind of like almost like a life goal. If you can achieve that congruency, then you'll really be live. You'll be in control of yourself, because everything that you do is intentional and you're behaving the way you desire to behave.
Like you know what you're doing.
Sure, it doesn't mean you don't make mistakes, But when you make
Yeah.
a mistake, it was you were doing what you thought was the best. It wasn't, your subconscious wasn't driving the car
Again, the conflicts didn't happen in your body.
internally.
Mhm.
Yeah. So yes, I mean, how about to end this, we just talk about quickly any advice for people in Taiwan about this, seeing as we've said that in Asia there's a stigma and everything. What would you say? What would your advice to people be?
Yeah, I think it's actually a good time now. Like we have more resources on Facebook, Instagram, like different channel. People talked about it. It's just more open in general. I think if you're thinking about it, just give it a try because it doesn't.
And not just one session, right? Try like
Actually,
4 or 6
yeah, it will
before you
take
judge.
a while, but then it might feel it's definitely more expensive than most of the cost, like but still I think it's if you are interested in self development or knowing yourself better, I think it's a good thing is to try it out before you make judgment about it. And if you have friends is doing it, it's also a great thing if you can show support or talk about it.
Sure.
And so the other example is like freezing egg, right? It's like something people talk, like people are doing egg freezing is actually quite common to start with some of the friends already doing it, and through sharing the experiences they know the cost, how it looks like, how long it takes, and what's the benefit and what's the downside, which clinic to go to. I think it's all about informed decision. So before you jump into, it's definitely a good thing or bad thing, like educate yourself a little bit, make yourself an informed decision if your resource allowed, and you feel that it could be the things you want to give it a try. It's like give an English class a try or give a yoga class a try.
Sure.
Also try to
Can't hurt, right?
give it a try, see if you like it, and then find the way that fit your lifestyle the best. Yeah.
All right. And Abby, what about you?
Okay. Although I only did it once to go to the
Super successful.
I want to go to that one too.
Yes. 1 hour. You are healed.
That's a Jesus.
but I think it's really different from because lots of people think it's just like talking. We also can talking with friends, talking our problem, and probably it will fix. But I think the experience is different because the therapist will help you to dig out what's the problem behind you.
Sure. Can I add one thing to that quickly? Just one.
Why you can?
No, I just want to add because there's something about therapy that's actually really nice. You get an hour to talk guilt-free about yourself.
Yeah.
You just
Yeah,
you're
they
there
will not
for
judge you.
They don't talk about themselves. You could talk about anything you want, and you don't have to worry that you're boring someone or talk. Oh, I'm talking too much about myself. No,
Yes.
that's what you're there for. So
Yes.
it's
Yeah,
like
so
you get
actually,
me time.
I'm gonna
right?
add
Yes.
on that
Yeah.
because so I think you're right that it's very common we talk with friends, but for myself, right, for example, I will care about the airtime. If I talk, I want to make sure my friend talk, and we are sharing something, we're having the interest and talk about something building on. Despite with a long time friend, I still want to know how things have been going on. But I think about the therapist, it's so one time I also talked with my therapist about this. I actually walk in to say I don't really know you. Like, how should I talk with you, right? I know nothing about you. I don't know about school. I don't only about the name and license, and that's it.
Yeah.
And then she asked me the question, like, why is it important to know who I am so you can talk with me? And then later I figure out, and then I have that concept later to say, this is an hour just for me. Because actually a privileged time. So you can
You could be selfish.
be selfish also important. So because in this society, just in general, to be social, it's hard to be really selfish. You visit family, you want to make sure you are hearing them, helping them. The same thing with the kid, with the friends. But in that hour, it's just for you. And it's for me, it's quite new. I was like, never been that before, and actually it feels good. Like,
Your own time. And I think they will also ask the right questions, and the experience make me like a shock because normally the friends wouldn't ask the question like in a totally different direction, but you can see the direction can help you. So it kind of gives me a tour, a kind of I learn a little bit and I can use in my after the therapies, I still can use it. So I think it's helpful.
Sure. And I think for me, I would talk about something you mentioned right at the beginning, whereas you said that women talk more with each other. And if you think about the fact that men suffer mental health issues way more than women, I'd probably guess it's got something to do with that. You know,
Men just drink.
well, as men, we're told to be a man. You know, we're told to not really. I think we get the message that we shouldn't look at our feelings because we should just be tough. But actually, I think to really be a tough man, you need to be able to be tough with yourself and to look inwards and to be honest about your feelings and discuss those things. That's true strength. Hiding from your feelings is not strength. So, yeah, I think men, we should talk more, and we should talk more about real things. And also men should be less afraid to seek help and just admit that.
Yeah.
Then maybe we'll have less of a mental health problem, right? So
Yeah.
right. So anyway, Emma, thank you for joining us. It was
Thank
a
you
great
for
discussion.
having me.
Yeah.
It was
Thank
a
you
good
for the time.
discussion.
And I had those 3 things I wanted to say. What is it? 分享
分享
something.
按赞开铃铛是吗？
按赞、
按赞
按赞
分享
分享、
订阅
订阅。
Hey, I remember it, right? So yeah, we hope you guys have enjoyed our conversation, right? And if you do and you want us to keep doing it more, please just give us a like, share
Yeah.
with a friend. Anything you can do would really help us a lot. So
Thank you.
Thank
yeah,
you.
Abby, thank you very much. Another good Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
So from us here at Mei Xiangfa, hope you have a great week ahead. Bye bye.
Bye.